The security alarm screamed the second Gracie bypassed the lock. She had exactly 8 seconds before the backup system engaged. 6 before he'd know someone had breached his floor. 4 before every exit locked down. She slid through the door as it clicked open, heart hammering against her ribs, the stolen keycard still warm in her palm. The penthouse foyer stretched before her, all glass and steel and the kind of wealth that made people disappear quietly. Somewhere in this fortress, Chi Jung-wook was about to discover his secretary had just hacked her way into his home. The alarm cut off. The silence that replaced it was worse. Gracie stood in the entryway, crimson dress clinging to her like a second skin. Silver clutch gripped tight enough to leave marks on her palm. 21 days. 21 days of being erased. Of watching the man she'd spent 18 months building an empire beside suddenly act like she was furniture. 21 days since he'd overheard her phone call and decided she was a liability instead of a partner. She'd counted every morning she arrived to find her desk cleared of the jasmine tea he used to leave. Every afternoon he'd taken meetings in rooms she was suddenly barred from. Every evening he'd left through the private elevator to avoid passing her office. Tonight, she was done being invisible. Welcome to Ruthless Romance Tales. And honey, you just stepped into something you can't unsee. If you've been riding with me, you know we don't do safe here, we do dangerous. We do addictive. We do the kind of love that brands your soul and refuses to let go. And if you're new, buckle the hell up, because what you're about to witness is a collision so violent, so inevitable, it'll rewrite everything you thought you knew about romance. Hit that like button, like your life depends on it. Subscribe because you're already hooked, and smash that notification bell, because missing what comes next would be a crime. Now let's watch the Dragon of Gangnam lose his mind. The lights in the hallway flickered on. Motion sensors. She wasn't alone anymore. Footsteps. Deliberate. Unhurried. The kind of walk that said the predator had already won. Wook emerged from the corridor like something out of shadow, still in his work clothes, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked exhausted. Dangerous. His eyes tracked from her face down the length of red silk, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Something raw. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath skin as he stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of his aftershave mixing with something darker. Whiskey. He'd been drinking. You broke into my home. His voice was quiet. The kind of quiet that preceded violence. Gracie lifted her chin, refusing to back down even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Your firewall was insulting. I expected better from the Dragon of Gangnam. The alarm. I disabled in 4 seconds. You're welcome. She took a step forward, heels clicking against the polished floor. I tried the front door first, Wook. You changed the codes. You changed everything. So I improvised. His eyes narrowed, that sharp intelligence she'd fallen for, cutting through the exhaustion. Why are you here? Why do you think? She gestured at herself, at the dress she'd bought months ago, imagining his hands would be the ones taking it off. I have a gala to attend, the Busuzan charity event. You remember charity, don't you? That thing you pretend to care about while laundering money through art auctions. Something flickered across his face. You are not going anywhere in that dress. The words hit her like a physical slap, but she'd spent 21 days preparing for war. Last I checked, you stopped being my boss the day you decided I didn't exist. Gracie. No. She cut him off, voice sharp enough to draw blood. You don't get to say my name like it matters. Not after 3 weeks of nothing. Not after you heard half a conversation and decided I was disposable. His hands flexed at his sides, the only sign he was holding himself back. You said you needed out. I said I needed out of the tax reports, you idiot. Out of the suffocating spreadsheets. Out of pretending to be just your secretary when we both know I'm the reason your syndicate didn't collapse 6 months ago. She took another step closer, invading his space the way he'd invaded every corner of her mind. But you heard what you wanted to hear. You heard betrayal because that's all you know how to expect. The silence stretched between them, thick with 3 weeks of unsaid words. His eyes were black in the dim light, pupils blown wide as they traced the line of her collarbone, the curve of her shoulder. She watched his throat work as he swallowed. I was protecting you, he said finally, voice rough. From what? From me. From this life. From... He stopped, jaw clenching. From everything that's coming. Gracie's stomach dropped. What's coming? But Wook just shook his head, stepping back, putting distance between them like he couldn't trust himself too close. The loss of his proximity felt like cold water. Go home, Gracie. Forget the gala. Forget this. He gestured vaguely at the space between them. Forget me. She laughed, the sound bitter. 3 weeks too late for that, boss. She turned toward the door, her exit, her escape from this mausoleum of almosts. Enjoy your fortress. She made it 2 steps. His hand closed around her wrist, not rough, but firm enough to stop her. The touch burned. 21 days without contact, and now his skin against hers felt like lightning finding ground. Wait. Gracie froze. His fingers were warm against her pulse point, and she knew he could feel her heart racing. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze with every ounce of defiance she could summon. Waiting requires you to actually say something, Wook. He released her wrist like it burned him, but didn't step back. Instead, he moved closer, eliminating the space she'd fought to create. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The Bususan Gala isn't a charity event. It's a tribunal. Charity Bususan. Her breath caught. What are you talking about? 3 families. The Kims, the Parks, the Songs. They've been consolidating power for months, waiting for the right moment to move against me. He dragged a hand through his hair, the first genuinely unguarded gesture she'd seen from him in weeks. I found out 2 days after I heard your call. The timing was too convenient. You thought I was involved. The realization settled in her chest like lead. I thought they got to you, turned you, offered you a way out that didn't involve me. His eyes searched her face, looking for something she wasn't sure she could give. So I cut you loose before they could use you as leverage, before they could hurt you to get to me. Gracie's mind raced, fitting pieces together she hadn't known were missing. The locked files, the changed security codes, the way his lieutenants had started treating her like a ghost 3 weeks ago. He hadn't been pushing her away. He'd been building walls between her and the war he saw coming. You're an idiot, she said quietly. His jaw tightened. I was trying to save me, protect me. She stepped into him now, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. I don't need saving, Wook. I need the truth. I need you to stop treating me like I'm fragile. You're not fragile. His voice was rough, strained. You're the strongest person I know. That's why they'd target you first. The admission hung between them, loaded with everything he wasn't saying. Gracie felt something shift in her chest, that dangerous warmth she'd been fighting for 18 months. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of understanding, the foundation of something that could become more if they both stopped being cowards. Show me, she said. What? Show me what you've been hiding. The files you locked, the meetings I'm suddenly too dangerous to attend. If there's a war coming, I want to see the battlefield. Wook studied her for a long moment, weighing something she couldn't read. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Follow me. He led her through the apartment she'd only seen pieces of before, down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably fronted for stolen antiquities. His office was at the end, a room of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The city sprawled beneath them, millions of lights hiding millions of secrets. Wook moved to his desk, pulling up files on 3 monitors simultaneously. Financial statements, shipping manifests, security footage. He worked quickly, his fingers flying across keys with the same precision he brought to everything. Gracie moved beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, and started scanning the data. Here, he pointed to a series of transactions. The Kims have been moving assets out of traditional holdings into offshore accounts. The Parks are consolidating their real estate, and the songs are liquidating. Gracie finished, her accounting brain catching what he was showing her. They're preparing for something big, something that requires immediate capital. A takeover. Wook pulled up another screen, this one showing a guest list. The gala tonight. Look at who's attending. Gracie scanned the names and her stomach dropped. Every major player in Seoul's underworld would be in one place. It's not a tribunal, it's an ambush. They're going to move against you tonight, in front of everyone, so no one can claim ignorance later, which is why you can't go. Wook turned to face her fully. Which is why I need you far away from this. But Gracie was already shaking her head, mind racing through possibilities. No, this is exactly why I need to be there. Gracie, listen to me. She gripped his arm, forcing him to focus. You walk into that gala alone. You're confirming every rumor they've spread about you losing control. You show up with me, your secretary, your right hand, the woman who knows where every body is buried in your books, and you show strength, unity. You show them they didn't break you. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite hope, but close. You'd do that? Walk into a room full of predators knowing they're planning to tear me apart? Gracie smiled, sharp and dangerous. I've been walking into rooms full of predators since I took this job, Wook. The only difference is tonight I'm wearing better shoes. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his expression shuddered again. There's something else you need to know. About why they're moving now. About what they think they have on me. What is it? Wook hesitated, and Gracie saw the moment he decided to trust her. Really trust her. They have my brother. The world tilted. Gracie had spent 18 months learning everything about Chijang Wook, and in all that time, he'd never once mentioned family. I didn't know you had a brother. No one does. I sent him to America 5 years ago to keep him safe. Stanford, medical school, a life away from all this. His voice was hollow. The songs found him. They're holding him somewhere in the city. If I don't step down tonight, publicly transfer my territory to them, they'll kill him. And there it was. The real reason for the walls. The silence. The distance. He hadn't been protecting her from the syndicate. He'd been protecting her from becoming another hostage. Gracie's mind was already moving, calculating angles and possibilities. How do you know they actually have him? Wook pulled out his phone, handed it to her. The video was short. A young man, early 20s, tied to a chair in a concrete room. He looked like Wook. Same sharp jawline, same intelligent eyes. But where Wook was hard edges, his brother was softer, unweathered by this life. They sent this yesterday, Wook said quietly. He has 72 hours. After that, he didn't finish the sentence. Gracie handed back the phone, her hand steady even as her mind raced. Then we have 72 hours to find him. We? She met his eyes, letting him see the determination in hers. I told you, I don't need saving, but maybe, just maybe, you do. Gracie moved back to the monitors, her accounting instincts overriding the shock. Show me the timestamp on that video. Wook pulled it up. Yesterday, 3 p.m. And when did they first contact you about this? 4 days ago. Anonymous message. No proof at first, just a threat. His voice was flat, controlled. The voice of a man who'd been holding everything together by sheer will. The video came after I refused to meet their terms. Gracie's mind was already dissecting the timeline, looking for the cracks in their story. She'd spent 18 months learning to read between the lines of financial statements and shell companies. Kidnapping plots followed patterns too. What did they ask for initially? Territory, the shipping routes through Busan port, my stake in the Gangnam real estate holdings. He pulled up a map on the center screen. Everything that matters. And the gala? The deadline. Show up, sign over my assets in front of witnesses, or my brother dies. Wook's jaw tightened. They've structured it perfectly. Either I comply publicly, which destroys my reputation and power base, or I refuse and become the man who let his own blood die. Either way, I lose. Gracie studied the map, her eyes tracing the shipping routes. Something wasn't adding up. Your brother. What's his name? Daejung. He goes by David at Stanford. And you've kept him secret for 5 years. No one in Seoul knows he exists. No one, Wook confirmed. Then how did the songs find him? Gracie turned to face him. Think about it, Wook. Your brother is your most carefully guarded secret. You've spent 5 years making sure no one connects him to you. No shared last name, no contact that could be traced, no money transfers that would raise flags. So how did they suddenly discover him? She watched the realization dawn on his face. Someone told them. Someone close enough to know. Gracie moved back to the monitors, pulling up the financial files. Someone who had access to information even your inner circle doesn't have. When did you last see your brother? 6 months ago. I flew to San Francisco, stayed for a weekend, told my people I was meeting with suppliers. Who knew you were really going to see family? Wook went very still. No one. I didn't tell anyone. But someone followed you. Or tracked you. Or... Gracie stopped, her eyes catching on something in the shipping manifests, a pattern she'd noticed weeks ago but hadn't thought was important. Wook, these container numbers, the ones flagged for inspection last month. Who authorized the route changes? My logistics manager, Kim Suk-jin. Why? Gracie's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up personnel files. Because Kim Suk-jin's sister married into the Song family 18 months ago, right around the time I started working for you. She turned the screen toward him. And look at his travel records. San Francisco. 6 months ago. Same week you were there. The silence in the office was deafening. Wook stared at the evidence, his expression shifting from shock to something cold and lethal. He's been feeding them information for over a year, which means they've been planning this for over a year. Gracie pulled up more files, her heart racing. They didn't just find your brother, Wook. They've been building a case against you, gathering leverage, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The gala isn't the beginning. It's the finale. Wook moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the tension radiating off him. If Kim's been reporting to them for 18 months, they know everything. Every deal, every shipment, every he stopped, they know about you. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. If the songs knew about Gracie, if they'd been watching her as long as they'd been watching Wook, then tonight wasn't just about his brother. It was about eliminating every piece on the board that mattered to him. That's why you cut me out, Gracie said quietly. 3 weeks ago, you didn't just hear my phone call. Something else happened. Wook's jaw worked. I found a tale on you. 2 men, Song family following you from work to your apartment. I had them removed, quietly. But I knew what it meant. They were cataloging my weaknesses. So you tried to make me not a weakness. Gracie felt something shift in her chest, that dangerous warmth spreading despite the situation. He hadn't been pushing her away because he didn't care. He'd been trying to save her life. By making me irrelevant. By making them think you were irrelevant. Wook corrected. If you were just a secretary I'd fired, someone who walked away angry, you'd be worthless as leverage. They'd leave you alone. Except I didn't walk away. No, he said softly. You broke into my home wearing a dress designed to make me lose my mind. The moment stretched between them, charged with everything they weren't saying. Gracie forced herself to focus. The video of your brother. Can I see it again? Wook pulled it up, and this time Gracie watched with different eyes. Not just watching the brother, but analyzing the background. The concrete walls, the industrial lighting, the faint sound of water dripping somewhere off-screen. This isn't a warehouse, she said suddenly. Listen, that's not water dripping. That's condensation. From climate control. And look at the wall behind him. That's not concrete. It's painted to look like concrete, but you can see the seam of the panels. Wook leaned closer, squinting at the screen. What are you saying? I'm saying your brother isn't being held in some abandoned building. He's somewhere with climate control, with constructed walls, with production value. Gracie's mind raced. This video was staged. Professional. Like they wanted you to see exactly what they wanted you to see. You think he's already dead? No. Gracie turned to him. I think he was never kidnapped at all. I think this is a setup, and your brother is the bait in a trap even bigger than we thought. Wook stared at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely shaken. If Dae-jung isn't being held hostage, then what the hell is happening? Gracie pulled up the guest list for the gala again, her eyes scanning names with new purpose. I don't know yet, but we're going to that gala, and we're going to find out, together. Wook paced the length of his office, the controlled facade finally cracking. If this is a setup and Dae-jung was never taken, then why send the video? Why threaten me with something they don't have? Gracie was already pulling up flight records, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Because they need you desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. She found what she was looking for and her stomach dropped. Wook, when was the last time you actually spoke to your brother? Not surveillance footage, not third-party confirmation. Actually heard his voice. He stopped pacing. 2 months ago, brief call. He said he was in the middle of exams, couldn't talk long. Pull up your phone records. Wook hesitated, then complied. The call log showed a 3-minute conversation 8 weeks prior. Gracie cross-referenced it with Stanford's academic calendar on another screen. Their exam period ended 3 weeks before that call. He lied about why he couldn't talk. The implications settled between them like poison. Wook's voice was dangerously quiet. You think my brother is working with them. I think your brother was their way in from the beginning. Gracie pulled up more data, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. 18 months ago, Kim Sok-jin's sister married into the Song family. 18 months ago, I started working for you. What else happened 18 months ago? Wook's face went pale. Dae-jung changed his major, dropped pre-med, switched to business management. Said he wanted to understand the legitimate side of commerce. Let me guess, you were proud. Thought he was finally accepting the family legacy, just doing it the legal way. I increased his allowance, gave him access to a trust fund I'd been building since he was a kid. Wook's hands clenched into fists. $3 million. He said he wanted to invest it, learn the markets. Gracie's heart ached watching him realize the betrayal. Where's that money now? Wook pulled up financial statements with shaking hands. The trust fund had been systematically drained over the past year. Small withdrawals at first, then increasingly larger amounts. The final transfer had happened 4 days ago, the same day the first kidnapping threat arrived. He took everything, Wook breathed. My own brother has been financing my enemies. Not just financing. Gracie pulled up the video again, zooming in on details she'd missed before. Look at his hands. He's not tied up. Those are marks drawn on with makeup. And his eyes, he's not scared, Wook. He's acting. This entire video is theater. Wook slammed his fist against the desk, the sound echoing through the office. The carefully controlled man she'd known for 18 months was unraveling, and Gracie understood why he'd built those walls so high. This was what lived beneath. Rage, pain, the kind of betrayal that reshaped a person. Why? His voice cracked. I gave him everything. I kept him safe, kept him clean, gave him the life our father never could. Why would he do this? Gracie moved closer, close enough to touch, but not touching. Because the songs offered him something you couldn't. A throne. They've probably promised him control of your territory once you're gone. He doesn't want to be the protected little brother anymore. He wants to be the dragon. The analysis was brutal but necessary. Wook needed to see clearly, to understand the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a territorial grab. It was a coup orchestrated by his own blood. The gala, Wook said after a long moment, his voice steadying. If Daejung is part of this, he'll be there. Probably. He's the final proof that you're broken. They'll want him visible, want everyone to see that even family abandoned you. Gracie pulled up the guest list again. But here's what they don't know. We figured it out. We have 4 hours before that event starts, and they think you're walking in blind and desperate. Wook finally looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You could still walk away. This isn't your fight. These aren't your enemies. They followed me for weeks. They cataloged me as one of your weaknesses. They made it my fight the moment they decided I mattered. Gracie held his gaze. Besides, I didn't spend 18 months building this empire just to watch it fall because your brother has daddy issues. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. You're terrifying when you're angry. You have no idea. She glanced at the clock. We need a plan. Walking into that gala knowing what we know gives us an advantage, but only if we use it right. They're expecting you broken. We give them broken. What do you mean? Gracie's mind was racing through scenarios, calculating risks and payoffs. You show up defeated, willing to sign over everything, make them think they won. And then? Then we prove your brother isn't kidnapped by having him walk into the room alive and well, in front of everyone, destroy their leverage, destroy their credibility, and turn their tribunal into your coronation. She pulled up building schematics for the gala venue. But first, we need to figure out their endgame. Because if Daejung is working with them, if he's been planning this for 18 months, then tonight isn't about taking your territory. It's about taking your life. Wook studied the schematics, his strategic mind reasserting itself. The ballroom has 4 exits, 2 public, 2 service corridors. If they're planning an assassination, they'd need to control all exits. Make sure you can't run. Gracie zoomed in on the service corridors, which means they have people planted as staff, security, maybe even catering. We can't trust anyone at that venue. No, Gracie agreed. We can't, which is why we're bringing our own insurance. She turned to him. You said you had Kim's men removed when they were following me. Who did you use? My personal security team. 3 men I've trusted for years. Can they be ready in 4 hours? They can be ready in 1. Gracie nodded, the plan solidifying in her mind. Then here's what we do. You show up ready to surrender. I show up as your date, the secretary you tried to cut loose but couldn't let go. We play the part they expect. Broken boss, loyal woman. Meanwhile, your men are already inside, identifying threats and blocking exits. And when Daejung shows himself, we expose him. Not with accusations, but with proof. Bank records, flight logs, the staged video forensics. She met his eyes. We destroy him the same way he tried to destroy you. Publicly, brutally, so thoroughly that even the families backing him will cut their losses. Wook was quiet for a long moment. Then, this could still go wrong. They could kill us both. They could, Gracie admitted. But at least we'd go down fighting together. The next 2 hours moved like clockwork. Wook made calls in rapid Korean, his voice clipped and authoritative as he summoned his security team. Gracie worked the financial angle, building a digital portfolio of evidence that would be impossible to refute. Bank transfers, travel records, the trust fund depletion timeline, every piece of proof that Dae-jung had been systematically betraying his brother. She was deep in the code of a shell corporation when Wook appeared beside her with a garment bag. "You can't wear that dress," he said. Gracie looked down at her crimson silk, the dress she'd chosen specifically to get his attention. "Why not?" "Because every eye in that room will be on you, and I need them focused on me." He unzipped the bag, revealing something that made her breath catch. Deep emerald green, structured and elegant, with a neckline that suggested without revealing, "This says partner, yours says distraction." She took the dress, feeling the weight of expensive fabric. "You keep evening gowns in your office?" "I keep options." His eyes met hers. "I had this made 3 months ago. Planned to give it to you for the company anniversary dinner, before everything went wrong." The admission hung between them, intimate and unexpected. 3 months ago, he'd been thinking about her, planning for her, imagining her beside him at company events. Gracie felt that dangerous warmth spread through her chest again, the foundation of something real taking shape. "I'll change," she said quietly. "But you owe me an explanation about why you have my exact measurements." A hint of color touched his cheeks. "You'd be surprised what a good tailor can estimate from observation." "You've been observing me?" "For 18 months, he admitted. "Every day." The honesty in his voice made something shift inside her. This wasn't the controlled crime boss or the distant employer. This was a man who'd been carrying feelings he thought he couldn't afford, protecting someone he cared about the only way he knew how, by pushing them away. Gracie took the dress and headed toward the private bathroom connected to his office. "Don't hack into anything important while I'm gone." "That's your job," he called after her. She changed quickly, the green silk sliding over her skin like water. The fit was perfect, almost unsettling in its precision. When she emerged, Wook had changed too. Black suit, sharp lines, the uniform of a man going to war, but his eyes when he saw her held something softer. "You were right about the measurements," Gracie said, smoothing the fabric over her hips. "Creepy, but accurate. I prefer thorough." He moved toward her, holding out a slim black case. "One more thing." Inside was a necklace, not diamonds or pearls, but something far more practical. A thin silver chain with a pendant that looked decorative but wasn't. Gracie recognized the shape immediately. "Is that a panic button? Press it twice, my security team responds within 30 seconds. Press it 3 times, and they evacuate you from the building regardless of what's happening to me." His voice was steady, but she heard the fear underneath. "I need to know you have a way out." Gracie took the necklace, feeling the weight of what he was offering. Protection, escape, the choice to save herself even if it meant leaving him behind. She fastened it around her neck, the metal cool against her skin. "I'm not using this," she said. "Gracie, I'm not running, Wook. Whatever happens in that ballroom, we face it together." That was the deal. He studied her face, searching for doubt he wouldn't find. Finally, he nodded. "Then we need to talk about what happens when Dae-jung sees us together. He'll know something's wrong." "Good." Gracie pulled up the gala seating chart on her phone. "Let him be nervous. Let him wonder what we know. Nervous people make mistakes too." "You're enjoying this," Wook observed, something almost like admiration in his voice. "I'm enjoying finally being included." She zoomed in on the main ballroom layout. "Your brother will expect you broken and alone. Instead, you walk in with me, confident and collected. It changes the entire dynamic." Wook's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression shifted. "My security lead just sent confirmation. They've identified 8 Song family members working the venue tonight. 4 as servers, 2 as valet, 2 in the kitchen. 8 people positioned to control the environment." Gracie's mind raced through the implications. That's not just security for an ambush. That's staging for something bigger. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking they don't just want you dead, Wook. They want it public and humiliating. They want your death to be a message to every other syndicate in Seoul." She looked up at him. "Which means the actual attack won't come during dinner. It'll come during speeches, when everyone's watching." Wook went very still. The Song family patriarch is scheduled to give a toast. 20 minutes into the event. Tradition. Perfect cover for an execution. Gracie pulled up the venue's technical specifications. "Is the event being recorded?" "Always. The families like documentation of their charitable endeavors." "Then that's when it happens. Cameras rolling, witnesses everywhere, no way to deny or cover it up. Your brother probably arranged for you to be giving a response speech, accepting your defeat gracefully in front of Seoul's elite. And when I stand up to speak, someone shoots you. Your brother looks horrified. The songs claim it was a rogue element, someone with a personal vendetta. They promise to hunt down the killer while quietly absorbing your territory. Clean, public, and legally defenseless. The plan was elegant in its brutality. Wook would be dead. Daejung would inherit whatever assets weren't immediately seized, and the Song family would expand their empire without appearing to have orchestrated anything. We need to change the script, Wook said. We already are. Gracie showed him the files she'd compiled. But we need one more piece. Proof that your brother is alive and free. The kidnapping story only works if he stays hidden. If he shows up at that gala. He won't, Wook interrupted. Daejung is too smart for that. He'll stay away. Let them play the grief card after I'm gone. Unless we force his hand. Gracie pulled up Daejung's social media profiles, his email, his entire digital footprint. We make him think the plan is falling apart. That you've discovered something you shouldn't have. We make him desperate enough to show himself. Wook looked at the screens, understanding dawning. You want to draw him out. I want to prove he was never taken. And the only way to do that is to make him break cover. She met Wook's eyes. Can you send him a message? Something only the two of you would understand? Wook's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He pulled out his phone and typed carefully, showing Gracie the screen before sending. Remember what father used to say about loyalty? I finally understand. See you soon, brother. The message was innocuous to anyone intercepting it. But Gracie saw Wook's hands shake slightly as he hit send. What did your father say about loyalty? That it's worth more than blood. Wook's voice was hollow. Daejung will know I'm telling him I know, and he'll panic. They waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. Then Wook's phone buzzed with a response. Some lessons take time to learn, Hyung. See you tonight. Gracie felt ice slide down her spine. He's going to be there. He's going to try to kill me himself. Wook corrected. That's what the message means. He's done hiding. The car ride to the Shilla Hotel was silent except for the city sounds filtering through bulletproof glass. Wook sat rigid beside her, his face carved from stone. Gracie could see him retreating into the shell he'd built over years of survival, the armor that turned men into legends and brothers into enemies. She reached across the seat and took his hand. He flinched, startled. Then his fingers closed around hers with almost bruising force. They didn't speak. Words felt inadequate for what was coming. Instead, Gracie traced small circles on the back of his hand with her thumb, a gesture so simple it felt revolutionary. 18 months of professional distance, 3 weeks of silence, and now they were holding hands like teenagers on the way to face his brother's betrayal. When this is over, Wook said quietly, I'm taking you somewhere far from Seoul. Running away isn't your style. Not running, regrouping. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I need you to know that regardless of what happens tonight, you were right. About the walls. About trying to protect you by pushing you away. I was a coward. Gracie squeezed his hand. You were scared. There's a difference. Is there? Cowards don't walk into rooms where their own brother is planning to kill them. Cowards run. She turned to look at him, taking in the sharp line of his jaw, the exhaustion around his eyes. The vulnerability he was allowing her to see. You're many things, Chi Jang-wook, but a coward isn't one of them. The car pulled up to the hotel entrance, where cameras flashed and Seoul's elite emerged from luxury vehicles in designer clothes worth more than most people's annual salary. Gracie felt Wook's hand tighten once more before he released her. Remember, he said, his voice dropping into the authoritative tone she knew so well. Stay close. Don't accept any drinks you didn't watch being poured. And if anything feels wrong, I press the panic button and your men extract me. I know. She adjusted the necklace, feeling the weight of the pendant. But I'm not leaving without you, Gracie. Non-negotiable. She met his eyes. We go in together, we leave together. That's the deal. His jaw worked, but he nodded. The driver opened the door, and suddenly they were stepping into the glare of camera flashes and polite smiles that hid sharp teeth. Gracie felt Wook's hand settle on the small of her back, warm through the green silk, possessive and protective at once. The whispers started immediately. She could feel eyes tracking them as they moved through the entrance, hear the speculation rippling through the crowd. The dragon of Gangnam, who everyone expected to arrive broken and alone, had shown up with a woman on his arm. Not just any woman, but his secretary, the American accountant who'd been conspicuously absent from his side for weeks. Gracie kept her chin high and her expression serene, playing the role of the supportive partner even as her mind catalogued everything. Security positions, exit routes, faces that showed too much interest or too little surprise. She spotted 3 of the Song family servers within the first minute, recognized the controlled way they moved, the constant scanning of the room. "They're nervous," she murmured to Wook. "Good." The ballroom was excessive even by Seoul's standards. Crystal chandeliers caught light from hundreds of candles, reflecting off silk wallpaper and polished floors. Round tables filled the space, each one a careful arrangement of allies and enemies forced to break bread together under the guise of charity. Gracie spotted their assigned seats near the front, close to where the speeches would be given, close to where Wook was supposed to die. "Mr. Chi." A smooth voice cut through the ambient noise. "How unexpected to see you." Gracie turned to find an older man approaching, his silver hair impeccable, his smile practiced. She recognized him from Wook's files. Song Tae-yang, the patriarch of the Song family, the man who'd orchestrated this entire trap. Wook's hand remained steady on her back. "Mr. Song, thank you for the invitation." "Of course. We were concerned when you didn't RSVP." Song's eyes slid to Gracie, assessing. "And you've brought a guest. How delightful." "My secretary, Gracie Edward." Wook's introduction was smooth, giving nothing away. "She insisted on accompanying me tonight." "Did she?" Song's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. "How loyal." One does appreciate loyalty in these uncertain times. The word loyalty hung between them like a blade. Gracie felt Wook tense infinitesimally beside her, the only sign he'd caught the reference to his earlier message to Dae-jung. "Miss Edward," Song continued, "I don't believe we've been formally introduced, though I've heard much about your talents with numbers." "All boring spreadsheet work," Gracie said lightly, offering her hand. "Nothing as exciting as running a family empire." Song's handshake was brief, his palm dry and cool. Modesty. How refreshing. He turned back to Wook. "We'll be starting speeches in about 15 minutes. I do hope you'll say a few words. It would mean so much to everyone here." "Of course," Wook replied evenly. "I have much to say." Something flickered behind Song's eyes, surprise, maybe, or concern. He'd expected Wook defeated, not composed. The script was already changing, and they all knew it. "Excellent. Please enjoy the champagne. It's a 2012 Dom Perignon. Quite rare." Song nodded politely and moved away, but Gracie noticed how his eyes tracked them even as he greeted other guests. "He knows something's wrong," Gracie whispered once they were alone. "He's wondering why I'm not begging for my brother's life." Wook guided her toward their table. Let him wonder. They took their seats, and Gracie used the moment to scan the room more carefully. She spotted the other Song family plants, noted the exits, counted potential threats, but she didn't see Dae-jung. Wook's brother was here somewhere, his message had confirmed it, but he was staying hidden. A server approached with champagne flutes. Gracie watched Wook wave them away politely, his paranoia well-founded. Poison would be too obvious, but drugging them enough to make Wook sluggish during the attack? That was possible. "There," Wook said quietly, his eyes fixed on something across the room. Gracie followed his gaze and felt her stomach drop. Near the service entrance, partially hidden by a decorative screen, stood a young man who looked like a softer version of Wook, Dae-jung. He was watching them with an expression Gracie couldn't quite read: anger, fear, something desperate. He wasn't supposed to be visible yet. The plan had him staying hidden until after the assassination. But here he was, staring at his brother like a man watching a ghost. "He's scared," Gracie realized. "Your message rattled him more than we thought." "Good." Wook's voice was ice. "Let him be scared. Let him wonder what I know and what I'm planning. Let him feel exactly what I felt when I thought he was being tortured." The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the beginning of speeches. Song Tae-yang moved to the podium, his presence commanding immediate silence from the 200 guests assembled. Gracie felt Wook's hand find hers under the table, hidden from view but grounding them both. "Distinguished friends," Song began, his voice carrying across the ballroom with practiced ease. "We gather tonight not merely as business associates, but as a family united in purpose. Seoul's prosperity depends on our cooperation, our mutual respect, our shared understanding that loyalty, true loyalty, is the foundation of everything we build." Gracie watched faces around the room. The Kim family patriarch nodded approvingly. The Park sat rigid, their expressions neutral but attentive. Everyone here knew this wasn't just a charity gala. This was theater, and they were waiting to see which act brought blood. Tonight we face difficult truths, Song continued, his eyes finding Wook in the crowd. We acknowledge that even the strongest among us can be brought low by forces beyond our control. Tragedy respects no name, no reputation, no power. The setup was masterful. Song was framing Wook's downfall as inevitable, as sympathetic even, so that when the assassination happened it would seem like mercy rather than murder. Gracie squeezed Wook's hand twice. Their signal. His security team would be moving into position now, blocking the service corridors, ensuring the Song family's planted staff couldn't control the exits as planned. Mr. Chi, Song said, turning his attention fully to their table. Would you honor us with a few words? I know these past weeks have been challenging for you. The entire room turned to watch. This was it. The moment Wook was supposed to stand, accept his defeat, and present himself as a target. Gracie felt her heart hammering against her ribs, her mouth dry despite the untouched champagne before her. Wook stood slowly, his movements deliberate. But instead of walking to the podium as expected, he remained by the table, his voice carrying without amplification. Mr. Song is right. These past weeks have taught me invaluable lessons about loyalty. His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on where Dae-jung still hovered near the service entrance, about who can be trusted when everything falls apart. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the speech of a broken man. I came here tonight prepared to discuss terms, Wook continued, to negotiate for something precious that was taken from me. But I've learned something interesting about negotiations. They only work when both parties are honest about what they have to trade. Song's expression remained pleasant, but Gracie saw his jaw tighten. Mr. Chi, perhaps we should discuss this privately. I think everyone here deserves transparency. Wook pulled out his phone, and Gracie knew he was accessing the files she'd compiled, especially when it concerns 18 months of careful planning, 18 months of turning family against family, of building traps from trust. Dae-jung moved then, stepping out from behind the decorative screen. His face was pale, his hands clenched at his sides. Hyung, don't. The entire ballroom froze. The kidnapped brother, supposedly being held hostage somewhere in Seoul, was standing in the room. Alive, free, dressed in an expensive suit and clearly not restrained. The whispers started immediately, confusion rippling through the guests like wildfire. Dae-jung. Wook's voice was steady, but Gracie heard the pain underneath. I wondered when you'd show yourself. Song Tae-young's pleasant mask cracked. This is highly irregular. Mr. Chi, your brother's presence here doesn't change. It changes everything, Gracie interrupted, standing beside Wook. She pulled out her own phone, projecting financial records onto the large screen behind the podium meant for charity presentations. Because a kidnapped man can't systematically drain a $3 million trust fund over 12 months. He can't change wire transfer patterns to match Song family accounts. And he certainly can't pose for staged hostage videos in a production studio rented under his own name. The evidence filled the screen. Bank statements, property records, the video of Dae-jung kidnapped, with metadata showing it was filmed 3 days ago in a studio in Gangnam, not some warehouse. Flight records proving Dae-jung had been in Seoul for the past 2 weeks, not California. The room erupted in shocked conversation. Phones came out, photos were taken, the documentation spreading in real time across Seoul's criminal underground. Dae-jung's face twisted with rage. You don't understand. You never understood. I spent my whole life being the protected one. The clean one. The one who had to stay away while you built an empire on our father's blood money. I didn't want protection. I wanted power. So you sold yourself to the Songs, Wook said quietly. Sold me. Sold 18 months of my life and called it ambition. I called it survival. Dae-jung moved closer, and Gracie saw 2 of the Song family servers shifting position, hands moving toward concealed weapons. You were always going to fall, Hyung. I just made sure I wouldn't fall with you. Song Tae-yang raised his hand, a signal Gracie recognized too late. The servers moved, drawing guns with terrifying speed. But they weren't aiming at Wook. They were aiming at Dae-jung. The younger man's eyes went wide with confusion, then fear. What are you? We had a deal. We had an arrangement, Song corrected coldly, which you just violated by revealing yourself before the appropriate time. You've become a liability, Mr. Chi, just like your brother. Gracie understood in a flash of horrible clarity. This was never about Dae-jung inheriting Wook's empire. The Songs had used the younger brother to destabilize Wook, to gather intelligence, to build their trap, but they'd never intended to let either brother survive. Daejung was always going to be disposed of after serving his purpose. The fool had betrayed his family for people who saw him as nothing more than a useful tool. No one fires a weapon in this room. Wook's voice cut through the chaos. His own security team emerged from their positions, guns drawn, trained on the Song family servers. The standoff was immediate and deadly. A dozen weapons aimed across the ballroom with Seoul's elite caught in the crossfire. Song Taeyang smiled, and it was the coldest thing Gracie had ever seen. Mr. Chi, you've made this far more complicated than necessary. Lower your weapons, accept the inevitable, and perhaps I'll let your brother die quickly. Or, Gracie said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the guns and chaos, you could explain to everyone here why you're so desperate to kill both brothers. What are you really afraid of, Mr. Song? The patriarch's eyes snapped to her, and in that moment, Gracie saw genuine fear flash across his face. There was something else, something they still hadn't uncovered, something worth killing two men in front of witnesses to protect. What did you find? Wook asked, immediately understanding. Gracie pulled up one final file, the one she'd discovered in the last hour before they left. I found the real reason the Songs wanted your territory. Gracie's voice cut through the standoff with surgical precision. The Song family is bankrupt, completely, catastrophically insolvent. They have 72 hours before their primary creditors call in debts they can't pay. The silence that followed was deafening. Song Taeyang's face went rigid, the mask of control finally shattering. That's ridiculous, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Gracie expanded the file on the screen, showing a cascade of financial statements, loan documents, margin calls. 3 months ago, the Song family invested heavily in a shipping venture that promised to dominate Southeast Asian trade routes. You leveraged everything, properties, businesses, even your legitimate holdings to secure your position. She pulled up another document. The venture collapsed 2 weeks ago, a combination of regulatory crackdowns and partner embezzlement. You lost everything, not just the investment but the collateral you'd put up. The banks want their money. The lenders want their properties. And you have nothing left to give them. The other families in the room were paying attention now, phones out, already verifying the information through their own channels. In Seoul's underworld, financial weakness was blood in the water. So, you targeted me, Wook said, pieces falling into place. Not for territory, for liquid assets, the cash reserves I've been building for 5 years. And the legitimate businesses, Gracie added, your restaurants, your real estate holdings, your import company, all clean, all profitable, all perfect for masking a desperate refinancing scheme. The Songs weren't planning a takeover. They were planning a heist dressed up as succession. Daejung's face had gone ashen. You said I'd inherit, you promised me. We promised you what you needed to hear. Song snapped, his composure crumbling. You were a means to an end, boy. A way inside your brother's organization, nothing more. Did you really think we'd give someone as weak as you actual power? The betrayal was complete. Daejung had sold out his brother for promises that were always lies, had become exactly the kind of pawn he'd claimed he didn't want to be. You're ruined, the Kim family patriarch said, standing from his table. His voice carried the weight of judgment. The Song family is finished. No one here will deal with you after this. You lied about your financial position. You attempted murder in front of witnesses. And you used a child against his own blood. We're not finished. Song snarled. He turned to his servers, the ones with guns still drawn. Kill them. Kill both brothers now. We'll say it was self-defense, that they attacked first. No. The voice came from behind Song, and everyone turned to see Song's own daughter stepping forward from the crowd. Song Ji-won, his eldest, the one who actually ran the family's remaining legitimate businesses. Father, this is over. Ji-won, sit down. I won't watch you murder people to hide your mistakes. Her voice shook but held firm. You gambled our family's future without consulting the council. You made decisions that destroyed 3 generations of building. And now you want to add assassination to the list of sins we'll be paying for? I did it for us. For our family's future. You did it for your pride. Ji-won turned to address the room. The Song family withdraws all claims against Chi Jang-wook. We acknowledge our debts, and will work with our creditors to resolve them honorably, and we formally disavow any actions my father has taken tonight. It was a coup, quiet and devastating. Song Taeyang's own daughter had just removed him from power in front of Seoul's elite. The servers lowered their weapons, looking to Ji-won for direction rather than her father. The patriarch seemed to age 10 years in seconds. You ungrateful, I built everything we have, and you destroyed it just as quickly. Jiwon's eyes were hard. Security will escort you home, father. The family will discuss your retirement tomorrow. Song's servers moved to flank him, not as protection but as guards. He looked around the room wildly, searching for support that no longer existed. Then his eyes landed on Dae-jung, and something vicious crossed his face. At least I didn't waste my life protecting someone who hated me. He spat at Wook. Your brother wanted you dead, Chi. Dreamed about it, planned it. Every smile, every call, every year you thought you were saving him, he was plotting against you. How does that feel? The cruelty was designed to wound, and Gracie saw it land. Wook's expression flickered, pain breaking through his control before he locked it down again. But Dae-jung spoke first, his voice small and broken. I didn't hate you, Hyung. I hated that I needed you, that I'd always be the protected one, the saved one, the weak one. He looked at his brother across the ballroom, tears streaming down his face. I wanted to be you so badly it made me destroy us both. The confession was raw, honest, and far too late. Wook stared at his brother, and for a moment Gracie saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of betrayal against blood, of 18 months of deception against 20 years of brotherhood. She couldn't read which way the scales would tip. You're not my brother anymore, Wook said finally, his voice empty. The boy I protected died the day he decided loyalty was negotiable. I don't know who you are, Dae-jung, but you're not my family. Dae-jung flinched like he'd been struck. Please, leave Seoul. Wook's tone was final. Tonight, take whatever money you have left from betraying me and disappear. If I see you again, if I hear your name connected to my city in any way, I won't be merciful. Hyung, go. The word was barely audible, but it carried the weight of absolute dismissal. Two of Wook's security team moved forward, flanking Dae-jung. Not roughly, but firmly. They'd escort him to the airport, ensure he actually left. The young man didn't resist, didn't plead further. He just looked at his brother one last time, memorizing a face he'd never see again, before allowing himself to be led away. The ballroom slowly came back to life, conversations resuming in hushed tones. The Kim and Park families were already leaving, wanting no further association with the evening's scandal. Others lingered, fascinated by the drama or calculating how the power shift would affect their own positions. Gracie felt Wook's hand find hers again, trembling slightly. We should go, she said softly. He nodded, unable to speak. They moved toward the exit together, security team forming a protective circle around them. As they passed Jiwon, the Song daughter met Gracie's eyes. Thank you, Jiwon said quietly. For the truth. Gracie just nodded. Some revelations were necessary, even when they destroyed everything in their path. The car ride back was nothing like the journey there. Wook sat rigid against the window, staring at Seoul's lights without seeing them. His hand had released hers the moment they'd entered the vehicle, retreating into himself in a way that made Gracie's chest ache. She didn't try to force conversation. Some silences were necessary for survival. They didn't go to his building. Instead, the driver took them to a place Gracie had never been, a small apartment in Itaewon, unassuming and anonymous among the neighborhood's chaotic mix of expats and locals. Wook's safe house, she realized. The place he went when he needed to disappear. Inside, it was sparse. Functional furniture, minimal decoration, everything designed for temporary refuge rather than living. Wook moved to the window, looking out at the street below, his shoulders carrying a weight that hadn't been there even 3 hours ago. Gracie slipped off her heels, the small domestic gesture feeling surreal after the night they'd survived. She found the kitchen, located a kettle, and started making tea. Not jasmine, there was none but green tea that smelled faintly of earth and comfort. She brought 2 cups back to the living room. Wook hadn't moved. She set one beside him and settled onto the worn couch, giving him space while staying close enough that he knew she was there. Minutes passed. Maybe 10, maybe 30. Time felt elastic. I taught him to ride a bike, Wook said finally, his voice barely audible. He was 7. Scraped his knee so badly it bled through his pants. He cried, said he wanted to stop. I told him every dragon falls before they learn to fly. Gracie waited, sensing there was more. He looked at me like I was everything, like I had all the answers. Wook's reflection in the window showed a man being hollowed out by memory. I spent 15 years making sure he never had to learn what I learned, never had to see what I saw, and he hated me for it. He hated himself, Gracie corrected gently. You were just the mirror. Wook turned then, his eyes red-rimmed but dry. You should leave. Go back to your apartment, pack your things, fly back to Chicago. This. He gestured vaguely at the space between them. Whatever we started tonight, it was adrenaline and proximity. You don't want this life, Gracie. You deserve better than a man whose own brother would rather see him dead. The words were designed to push her away, the same pattern he'd used 3 weeks ago. Protection disguised as rejection. But Gracie had learned to read him now, to see past the armor to the fear underneath. You don't get to decide what I deserve, she said, setting down her tea. And you definitely don't get to tell me my own feelings are just adrenaline. Then what are they? His voice cracked slightly. Because I don't know what this is, Gracie. I don't know how to do this. This? Care about someone who isn't blood. Trust someone who has every reason to walk away. He moved toward her, slowly, like approaching something fragile. I'm not good at this. Relationships. Vulnerability. I built walls because walls kept me alive. I know. Gracie stood, meeting him halfway. I've spent 18 months watching you build them, brick by brick. I've cataloged every defense mechanism, every retreat into control, every moment you chose safety over connection. Then you know I'm a terrible bet. The worst, she agreed. You're emotionally constipated, professionally dangerous, and you have family trauma that would make therapists weep. She reached up, touching his face with gentle fingers. But you also left me jasmine tea every morning for 6 months before you found the courage to say good morning. You've been observing me for 18 months because you were too scared to ask me to dinner. And tonight, you chose honesty over empire. His hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his cheek. I'm going to disappoint you. Probably. Gracie let herself smile. I'm going to frustrate you. I'll hack into things you don't want me seeing. I'll question your decisions. And I'll refuse to be protected when I should be. You're doing that already. Then you know what you're getting into. They stood like that, foreheads almost touching, breathing the same air. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a declaration. It was something more fundamental, a choice to stay when leaving would be easier, an acknowledgement that what existed between them was real enough to be worth the risk. I don't know how this ends, Wook whispered. Neither do I. Gracie felt the truth of it settle between them. But I know I want to find out. If you do. His answer came in the form of his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close in an embrace that felt like surrender and victory at once. She felt him shake slightly, the adrenaline and control finally breaking, and she held him through it. Held him while he processed what his brother had done, what he'd lost, what he'd chosen to save. They stayed like that until the tea went cold, and the city outside shifted into late night. Eventually, Wook pulled back enough to look at her. Stay tonight, he said. Just stay. Where? He gestured to the couch. Here, I'll take the bedroom. I just don't want to be alone. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Gracie nodded, understanding that intimacy wasn't always physical. Sometimes it was just sharing space with someone who understood your silence. She settled onto the couch while Wook disappeared into the bedroom. He emerged minutes later with a blanket, draping it over her with a care that made her throat tight. Thank you, he said quietly. For tonight. For everything. We're partners, remember? That's what you told the Song family. I meant it. I know. She caught his hand before he could retreat. Wook, we're going to be okay. Not tonight, maybe not for a while, but eventually we'll be okay. He nodded, not trusting his voice, and squeezed her hand once before letting go. She watched him disappear into the bedroom, door left slightly ajar, another gesture of trust, of not wanting barriers between them. Gracie lay back on the couch, exhaustion finally hitting her. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then curiosity won. The game isn't over, Miss Edward. Tell the dragon to watch the news tomorrow. A friend. Her blood went cold. She sat up, reading the message again, looking for context that wasn't there. Who was this? What game? What would be on the news? She thought about waking Wook, then hesitated. He'd just survived his brother's betrayal. He needed rest. Whatever this was, it could wait until morning. But as she lay back down, trying to sleep, Gracie couldn't shake the feeling that they'd won the battle but missed something crucial about the war. Morning came with the sharp clarity that follows surviving something you weren't sure you would. Gracie woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of news anchors speaking rapid Korean. She found Wook in the kitchen, tablet in hand, watching something that made his jaw tight. What is it? She asked. He turned the screen toward her. News footage from last night's gala. Not the confrontation that had been kept surprisingly quiet by the families involved, but something else entirely. Security footage from outside the venue showing Song Tae-young being arrested by Korean prosecutors as he left. Financial crimes, wire fraud, tax evasion, 20 years worth of evidence that had apparently been anonymously submitted to authorities overnight. Ji-won, Gracie realized. She didn't just remove him from power, she made sure he'd never come back. There's more. Wook switched to another article. The Song family's bankruptcy was now public, their assets being liquidated to pay creditors. But buried in the financial disclosures was something else, evidence that Song had been embezzling from his own family for years, funneling money into private accounts while claiming business losses. His children hadn't just lost their empire. They'd discovered their father had been stealing from them all along. The message, Gracie said suddenly, pulling out her phone. Last night, someone sent me a message saying to watch the news. Wook took her phone, reading the text. His expression shifted through several emotions before landing on something that might have been grudging respect. This number. It's registered to a law firm that Ji-won's family uses. She tipped us off, warned us this was coming, or thanked us. Wook set down the phone. We exposed her father's desperation, gave her the evidence she needed to take control. In Seoul's hierarchy, that's a debt. Gracie processed this, understanding the implications. So the Song family isn't an enemy anymore. The Song family is rebuilding under new leadership. And Ji-won is pragmatic enough to know that former enemies make better allies than destroyed ones. He paused. She sent a formal message this morning through proper channels. She wants to discuss a partnership, business only, legitimate ventures. She's trying to clean up what her father corrupted. It was the final piece falling into place. The chaos of last night was already reorganizing itself into new power structures, new alliances. Seoul's underworld was nothing if not efficient. What did you tell her? Gracie asked. I haven't responded yet. Wook met her eyes. Because I don't know what I'm building anymore. The empire I had 3 weeks ago was built on keeping people at a distance, on walls and control and never trusting anyone completely. That empire is what made my brother hate me, what made me push you away. He moved closer, and Gracie saw exhaustion mixed with something else in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of it. I want to build something different, he continued. Something that doesn't require me to sacrifice everyone I care about for survival. But I don't know if that's possible in this life. Gracie thought about the past 18 months. The slow building of trust, the careful dance around feelings neither of them knew how to name. The 3 weeks of silence that had nearly destroyed them both. The night that had tested everything they were and could become. What if it's not about the life? She said slowly. What if it's about who you choose to live it with? Wook studied her face, searching for something. You're saying you want to stay. Build this with me. I'm saying I've spent 18 months helping you build an empire. I'd like to try building something that doesn't require so many walls. She stepped closer. A partnership. Real one. Where you stop trying to protect me from your world and let me help you transform it instead. You want to reform a criminal syndicate. I want to evolve one. Ji-won has the right idea, legitimate businesses, clean money, power that doesn't require blood. We have the resources. We have the connections. And now, apparently, we have potential allies who want the same thing. She smiled slightly. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't go bankrupt trying to be noble. He almost laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. You're suggesting we become legitimate business people. I'm suggesting we become smart ones. Keep what works, discard what's poisoning us, and build something that won't turn your future children against you. The mention of future made something shift in his expression. Not fear this time, but possibility. The idea that there could be a future beyond survival, beyond the next threat. This won't be easy, he warned. The families won't all accept changes. Some will fight to keep things as they are. Good thing I enjoy a challenge. Gracie held out her hand. Partners? Wook looked at her offered hand, then at her face, then back. When he took it, his grip was firm and sure. Partners, in everything. The kiss that followed was nothing like the desperate passion of movies or the calculated seduction of power games. It was gentle and uncertain and real, two people figuring out how to be vulnerable together, how to build something neither of them had blueprints for. When they pulled apart, Wook kept her close. I still don't know if I deserve you. You don't, Gracie agreed cheerfully. But I'm choosing you anyway. That's how this works. Choosing me is going to be complicated. Everything worth having is. He smiled then, genuine and unguarded, and Gracie realized she'd never actually seen him smile before. Not like this. Not without the weight of performance or control. They stood together in the small kitchen of his safe house, Soul waking up outside, and made silent promises about the empire they'd reshape together. Not perfect, not innocent, but honest in a way neither of them had known was possible. Gracie's phone buzzed. A message from Jiwon. I assume breakfast means agreement? There's a cafe in Gangnam, we should discuss terms. Bring your accountant. She showed it to Wook. She's not subtle. She's efficient. That's worth respecting. He paused. Are we really doing this? Building a reformed criminal enterprise with your ex-enemy's daughter while figuring out if what we have is real? Gracie grinned. Absolutely. What could possibly go wrong? Wook pulled her close again, resting his forehead against hers. Everything. But at least we'll face it together. And somehow, that was enough. The strongest partnerships are built not in moments of triumph, but in the quiet choice to stay when leaving would be easier. Trust isn't given, it's constructed, brick by brick, from honesty that costs us something. Thank you so much for staying with Gracie and Wook through this wild journey. If you loved watching them navigate betrayal, build trust, and choose each other against all odds, please hit that like button and subscribe to Ruthless Romance Tales for more stories where love is complicated, dangerous, and absolutely worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling me which moment had you holding your breath. Was it the gala confrontation, the brothers' betrayal, or that final choice to build something new together? Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you the next story. Until then, remember, the best love stories aren't about perfect people. They're about real people choosing to be better together.